Well, folks, this is PIDT, of course. I don't know that there's a leader, but I guess I helped to organize the conference, but Jill and Tanya and who else is helping today, leading today? And Callie-Ann are leading today. So you guys are in charge. I don't mind chit-chatting for as long as you want to, but you guys can go and start whenever you guys want to. So, but thank you all for being here today. And we got a few more that are regulars that I'm sure are going to be popping up here. And we got some new people that must be helping out on the panels. So thank you guys for coming today too.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So the overarching theme for today is, how do we engage in mentoring and support systemic change in ID? And to get things going, we wanted to do a little bit of an icebreaker. So I'm going to share my screen really quick, and then we're going to send you some links in a second. Is it letting me share my screen? Oh, no. Let's see if this is going to work. Oh, I haven't used Zoom on this computer in a long time.
I just got back from running. I'm really dehydrated right now. So yeah, you're seeing me recover right now, right in front of your eyes.
Wow, this is not letting me. Okay, hang on. I got to change some settings. Sorry.
Got to give it all the permissions.
Yeah.
I noticed that after I got back this computer, because it had to go to Mac for a warranty repair, and it came back and literally in the middle of a meeting, permission to use the whiteboard, permission to share this screen, permission to share this app. I was like, really? I can't take this right now.
Yeah, and actually that is exactly what happened. It went to Mac and came back. It's going to make me quit and reopen Zoom. Tanya, would you be able to share your screen with the Dope Bird personality website up?
Gotcha.
Okay, so we're going to send you this link in just a second so you can take this Dope Bird personality test. So yeah, once you open it, you'll scroll down and it says that these are test questions. They're not. You're choosing one of these adjectives that best describes you or potentially that you most relate with. So you'll pick one of them. I think there's 20 items. And then at the bottom, there is a blue button to get your personality results. So you'll click on that when you're done. Then once you see what your personality results are, actually, can you open the Jamboard? Yep. You will add a sticky note to this Jamboard that has your name on it. And, put your sticky in whatever quadrant in the quadrant of your main bird. So you'll have different percentages of the bird when you get your personality results. So let me send these through the chat. Oops. Okay. So
can I choose a bird just because I want to choose a bird, not because it chooses me?
I mean, you could. I guess we would never know.
This is not Harry Potter. You do not get to tell the hat where you get sorted. I'm just saying.
I appreciate that reference.
I know. See, and I've been thinking about what bird I am all morning. I really was. I had different birds and different reasons. So, but that's good. So now I don't have to contemplate which one I'm going to choose.
Holly Hanley is my spirit animal.
Exactly.
I love this. You're all being the typical, normal, everyday university professor, refusing to do what everybody is supposed to be doing, which I think is awesome. Thank goodness.
Definitely not surprised.
Keeping the faith.
So yeah, so take a few minutes. And then once you have your results, send them through. Tiffany, I saw you just joined, so let me send you these links.
Thanks. I had a meeting, a 12:30 meeting that went over.
Yeah, no worries. Everyone is just taking this Dope Bird test really quickly and then adding a sticky to the Jamboard to indicate their main bird type.
All right, Yvonne. So why do they call you Owlet?
So my daughter is a Girl Scout and everybody has a camp name. So when I volunteered, I'm an owlet because it's a baby owl. And I love owls. which is obviously as shown through this dopey bird.
In my family, we have call signs. We're big fans of, there's a book called Skyward that's about space pilots, and they've got call signs in the, as they're talking to each other over the radio. So we each have call signs in my family, and my call sign is pack horse, because no matter where we go, I end up being the dad that has to carry everyone else's crap, because they're like, here, Dad, I brought an extra coat. Dad, here's an extra bag. Dad, carry my stuff. And I'm like, duh. So that's what I am. I'm the pack horse.
Tanya, are you saying that yours came out mostly like fertilizer? 30, 20, 20.
Phosphorus, calcium, potassium.
That's for my ag friend. Jill's an eagle. She's going to come in and swoop us all.
Well, I was going to propose creating a troublemaker quadrant when you were getting sassy a few minutes ago, not wanting to follow the rules, but
that would be the dodo bird right in the middle. That'd be me.
Okay, it looks like we are pretty close. And as I'm seeing names populate on here, I was like, oh yeah, you're definitely a dove, or you're definitely a peacock.
And I'm definitely abstinent. I just don't think it's worth my time to do this. Thank you anyway for the opportunity.
I love it. Well, we won't wait for your sticky then. Tanya, can you pull up those slides really quick? So I want to just cover a little bit about, and we don't have to go through all these slides, but what each of these birds are, especially if you had one, especially if you didn't do it, or if you're, one that didn't have one of these, right? So we have our doves. So they're the, people-oriented, deeply loyal, friendly, hardworking people who are great team players. We have the owls, the logical, mathematically minded, sometimes seen as perfectionists that love details. You have the peacocks that love talking, being the center of attention. They're highly enthusiastic, optimistic. And then your eagles, who are dominant, stimulated by challenges, decisive, they can be direct, natural achievers. So within this personality test, it kind of breaks things down into this quadrant to I guess talk about people's personalities. Obviously, you're not just one of these birds. It gave you percentages for each of them, although I got 0 dove. I don't know what that means. So, if you're thinking about yourself and what your additional results were, I'm hoping that some of this kind of you could see alignment with your personality. The main reason, though, to even talk about this, and if you want to go, I guess, you can go to the next, go back the other way where the dove description is. So the main reason to talk about this is, when we are working in higher ed and we're mentoring other people, whether it's graduate students or even other colleagues, understanding how people communicate with each other, how you can most effectively communicate with them, is probably not a bad idea, right? We've all had people that we've worked with that maybe don't have the same style as us, but that doesn't mean that we don't work well together, right? So I guess for our doves out there, in this description here, do you see anything that stands out to you as definitely something that, whether it's a colleague or a student would want to know about you in a mentoring relationship, and something that is like totally, completely off and completely wrong?
I think for me, the tendency to conform, Of course, all understanding that all of these are variable, they change depending on the situation and everything, as we all know. But tendency towards awkwardness, that's a good one for me.
Any other Jevs?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tiffany.
No, go ahead. You go.
I was just going to say this was very interesting because it was 40% dove and then almost 40%, I think it was 30% eagle. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But the dominant was doves. And I think it was relatively accurate, at least where I'm at today.
Awesome.
And my strongest, I was like dove and peacock, kind of in between. But I think when you're working in a large team, and you have your goals that you all need to achieve together, I think this probably does describe me, trying to be patient and working towards the team forward. But not also, I would say, if there's an avoidance to change or risk, it's more of like, well, let's think about the consequences of maybe taking on that thing. Not necessarily afraid of it, but just being pragmatic a bit. So I'll stop there.
That makes sense. Anyone else? Or we can, I guess, move to the next one, which is owl.
Yeah, I want to say I have eagle part, eagle and dove. Just have a second look at it. So I think on this list, unsure is not me. I'm usually very sure about what I think and what I believe. I guess that goes with the eagle really well. But the strengths are really good. It's a good match of me.
Cool. Okay, so our owls, kind of same question. Is there anything on here that you're like, yep, that's definitely me, or no, like that would not be something someone would need to take into consideration if they were working with me in a mentoring relationship? Well, I'll start, I guess. For me, I am definitely not indecisive, so that is not a characteristic of me, and I think that kind of aligns with my 45% eagle, 45% owl. So I'm more decisive, but yeah, definitely very systematic, deliberate. I want to focus. I'm going to ask a lot of questions if needed, and be very thorough. Any other owls?
Well, then maybe one question I have, if I was an advisor of any of these people, an advisor of an owl, what drives you crazy that I need to be careful not to do?
For me in particular, I don't know if anyone else feels this way. Actually, no, I was just going to say when things are too ambiguous, but that is actually when I thrive. I think just lack of clear communication, or trying to dance around something. For me, I'm not someone that is offended by any type of feedback. All feedback is good feedback, in my opinion. When I'm in that type of mentoring relationship, so I don't like when things are sugar coated. I guess that was a very long way to say that.
As you were trying to sugarcoat it, you were really working hard to.
I was really trying to.
I think for me, oftentimes it's I'm not indecisive. It's really like I'm weighing out pros and cons for everything. And then once I make a decision, then it's like, okay, go forward. And there's never any thought about, was that the right decision or not? Because I've already weighed things out. But the don't get too personal. Yeah, I think a lot of it is because we're kind of logical, detail oriented, and kind of want to get something done. A lot of the well, let's just, if you're going to have a meeting that's with a clear agenda and you know what you're going to get out of it, and not kind of this, well, let's just be here to rah and things like that. I just want to get things done, move on, so I can move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I came out in between owl and eagle, which is a really interesting blend, like you, Callie, because there's an element like the generally indecisive. I don't feel like fits with me at all. What I feel like fits with me here in this description is just wanting to take time to think about things, evaluate it, put my words together, things like that, taking a bit more of a, I wouldn't say cautious, just thoughtful approach to decision making as well as team interactions. The funny thing is, I am not a how person. I can do it when I have to, and we have to a lot, but that's not my natural state. So that's probably where whatever the eagle means comes in.
Cool. I think we can go to the next one maybe, which is the peacock, our showy and optimistic bird. So same question to you guys. Anything on here that maybe doesn't characterize you correctly, or that someone would definitely need to know? And kind of to Rick's question, how would a mentor need to approach you? And on the flip side of that, like how do you, I guess, think about mentoring others, maybe with other personalities?
So I showed up as 35% peacock, which is my highest number. And maybe I look this way on the outside, but this is not how I perceive myself at all.
What do you think? What do you more align with?
I'm not really sure.
Well, we haven't seen eagle yet, so maybe I'll ask you that after we do eagle.
I think I was 55% peacock, which I think, enthusiastic, friendly. I love people. The weakness, I'm wondering, seemingly manipulative. So I'm doing a self-reflection going, man, am I manipulative? I don't know. I don't mean to be manipulative, but, and I feel like I'm the egotistical part. I don't know. So that would be something for other peers to tell me, I guess. So, but I love developing relationships, enthusiastic, forthcoming. I think how to deal with me, probably how they tell you to deal with other people as strong leaders. So start with something positive and then go, but you need to work on this. I don't like that I'm like that, but I know that I am. So I have to really, on my student evaluations, I can have 99% good, but the one that's like negative, I'm going, why is this person thinking this? So I think that would be all very, I am coachable, but I do internally fixate on if there's something negative. So I don't know if that,
I think that's accurate too. I also was a little bit disappointed to be a peacock per se, because it seems like a, like a psychopath here, like manipulative, but I don't feel that that's hopefully my personality. Maybe some of you can tell me, but I think the emphasis in the peacock is on the social relationships, and that is important to me. And so I think if someone was my mentor, and I've had obviously great mentors, and I think the thing that I appreciated about them was the relationship, not just the getting the work done, but that was important. I remember Charles Graham was my thesis advisor at BYU before I went to Georgia and worked with Dr. Hannafin. And Hannafin would do the same thing, but they would invite us over to their home with our kids to just hang out with them sometimes. And that was really important to me as, I guess, a peacock, that I developed those relationships. So I think that's probably the way to work with a peacock.
I would definitely agree with that, being another peacock. And Holly, I get this. I worry about being perceived as manipulative or egotistical. Like that's a constant worry of mine. Although I'm laughing at the sometimes undisciplined. That is not me. And that has actually been my saving grace for most of my career. So somehow that came from one of my other birds. But you're exactly right, Rick. It's the relationships thing. When I was interviewing for doc programs and I went to Indiana, I was actually with the LS side of the house rather than the IST side of the house. But I was thoroughly impressed that we were at faculty homes having dinner and playing games with other recruits and even their families. And that meant a lot to me. So then getting to Georgia, I was able to experience that by getting close to Rob and his family, by getting close to Mike Ori. And we had, at that point, Mike had MoWorks Learning. So we would have these events off campus and we had these job opportunities off campus, but we had a close cohort. And I attribute those relationships to my success and giving me a good foundation.
Can I throw in 2 cents worth? Because I think the peacocks have hit the nail right on the head with the hammer. It's the simple fact of the matter is you keep talking about relationships. Mentoring is not, and several of you have talked about advising. You've talked about it in what you're talking about in terms of the things that you do in terms of advising. What the peacocks are describing is what is mentoring. That you're building a relationship between people to understand better who you are as an individual, at the same time that you're trying to help that other person become something more than what they are. And I think mentoring is that two-way street. And I think the peacocks have hit that nail right on the head.
You know, and I kind of wish that that was an element that was in the other birds, right? Because I think that that's something that all of us strive to do, is to create that connection with that person. I think one of the things that I always say to my mentees is that for this to be a good relationship between us, is there needs to be an authentic connection, right? There needs to be real sharing between what's happening, not just cursorily like, oh, I want to get another job, and I review your CV and you go, and that's it. Like, we sit down and spend time with each other and get to know each other. And I've been very fortunate that the mentees I've had, that they're so cute. Afterwards, they like, does this mean I can't call you or text you anymore? I'm like, no, please do not stop ever calling or texting me, right? And I always strive, and I make sure that they understand that I am learning from them, that it's not a one-way street that I'm funneling to them. It's back and forth, it's give and take. And that's the only way that I can grow as well.
I love that. We'll give our eagles a little bit of time to answer kind of the same questions and talk about their eagleness for us.
I mean, it's potentially true. I don't, it's, I don't know that I feel like I lose sight of the big picture, but otherwise, though, I found it interesting, like taking the measure, if you will. I was like, wow, 4 negative words that I have to choose from. Like, it's like, well, I'm going to pick this one because it seems like the best of the worst, and maybe can be attributed to me. And so I don't know that I'm not surprised that this is where I ended up, because that seemed to be where the words just went, right? Yeah, there you go.
To Rick's question earlier about working with some of these folks, being half peacock, half eagle, yes, please provide concise, precise, and organized information. To this day, I still love working with Rob because I'm going to get a numbered list of what we're doing. And I give that to my advisees, and I can't stand having to hunt and peck through 3 paragraphs of content to figure out what do you need from me.
Okay. So I think, as we continue to talk about, mentoring and supporting systemic change, I guess generally, and we've touched on this a little bit, but what can something as silly as this dope bird test tell us, or open the door for in a mentoring relationship?
Well, Callie, that's an excellent question. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I was just saying very quickly, that's an excellent question, because as Matthew was talking and he mentioned one of the items where there were 4 negative terms, it forced me to get this now, to acknowledge, okay, so maybe I'm not perfect. Maybe there are some rough edges someplace around there someplace. And just having to pick the least of what I thought would be a favorite characterization of me was humbling, and made it more realistic. And now the following conversation about, okay, so how do I communicate with others? So Callie, this was interesting. If nothing else, just having to make some judgments about those adjectives was very helpful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, just even kind of going through these descriptions and with someone kind of after the fact could open the door for like, okay, well, how do you like to communicate? This is what your bird says. Is that true? Like, how do you want me to talk with you? How do I want our relationship to kind of work in that way? And what do I know works well for me and really isn't going to work so well for me? Any other thoughts before we kind of transition into panels?
This is how everybody landed, so you can see where you are in position to everyone else.
I was just going to say one thing that I find interesting. I work with Rob, and I know how many times do we have a meeting, Rob, where I'm like, what's the purpose of this? What are our measurable outcomes? So I'm not surprised I fell in the eagle part with being the results oriented. And this is probably going to be an eagle response or comment that I'm about to make, but I always want to know what's the purpose of what I'm doing when I'm engaged in activity. And I think that Yvonne kind of touched on that earlier too, where if I'm hanging out with you socially, that's one thing. And if I'm working with someone I'm friends with or that I like, that's another thing. I have a completely different personality. If I don't really want to be your friend, I'll still work with you to get business done. So I'm going to be focused on whatever that goal is at hand. Or as Yvonne said, if we've got a meeting, we've got a meeting. But I'm looking at this and it's almost like, when Sharon mentioned with the peacocks, they kind of go into this with the goal. I'm going to say a goal as an eagle would, of really wanting to establish that friendship, the friendship aspects of things. And I think we could probably look at each one of these birds having something that they prioritize more in that they could prioritize more in that mentoring relationship. So I think it is eye-opening, because then when you kind of realize that might help you on how you might approach them, realizing what they're going to prioritize, how you might make your adjustments as the mentor as well.
Actually, I also think it's important to understand like one thing that I notice about these is like, I don't know how familiar everyone is with like the idea of the love languages, but sometimes the way that you give stuff and the way you receive stuff are different structures within that concept. So I think that might be true here too, that giving and getting information might be better done in different paradigms.
Well, and I think going back to the 5 love languages, I'm actually in part of I've heard people talk about the 5 love languages. I love that book, and we would give it to friends when they got married. I think it's a great book, but I've also heard some people criticize the 5 love languages because you can sometimes be a little bit manipulative with them. Like, why aren't you talking to me in my love language? You must not care about me or something like that. And I can't be loved unless you love me in my love language, that kind of a thing. And I think like that, this personality testing is maybe just a tool to think about, but not get so into our birds that then you say, I can't function unless you give me the numbered lists or whatever, or you have to do this or else you can't be a good advisor to me or a good mentee or something. It's just more a way to understand so that we can serve and hopefully understand people, but also we don't want to use it to manipulate people either.
Rick, I think that's such a great point to raise. I mean, when I think about people who I consider mentors or advisors throughout my career, three people come to mind, and they were so distinctly different. And those relationships were so distinctly different. And I don't want to put it just in terms of like what I got out of it, but what I got out of those relationships was also very different. And having that sort of variety and an opportunity to have different types of discussions with different individuals, where it's like, over here I feel safe having this kind of conversation, over here I feel safer having this kind of conversation, or I feel like I can really explore these types of ideas with this individual, or this individual kind of gets this aspect of me, and so it's easier to respond to that or whatever. So I think when we talk about mentoring, it's not even as simple as just like a one-to-one relationship, right? Many of us have many relationships that kind of fall not even on a continuum, but like in a rather amorphous space, where we're exploring different things through those relationships. And so I appreciate that you brought in this idea of like, of how do we bring diversity to the conversation here as well.
Yeah,
I like constellation. That's lovely.
Yeah, the constellation was really good comment. This is good stuff. And I was looking for the reference. I can't find it, but good mentors need, I'm sure, being a good communicator, being perceived as a good communicator with the person that you're mentoring has got to be part of it, I think. And when I think about good communication, I remember learning that good communicators, especially one-on-one, do a good job at mirroring the person with whom they're talking. I'm not, if the person's a fast talker, maybe you maybe speed up a little bit. If the person's a very slow, deliberate talker, you might slow down a bit. I reckon this is similar in terms of mentoring and personality, that if I'm mentoring someone, I need to learn that person's style and at least move toward them. I don't know if it was Tutalani or someone else had mentioned that, but the whole notion of adapting and being able to adjust and move toward them, so that if there is a gap, it begins to close. And once the gap is closed and you learn from each other, then you could, return to maybe your dominant personality type. But I would say the mentor may want to mirror to some extent the person, especially at the beginning of a relationship, and especially for our student colleagues, I would say. Again, I'm listening and I'll defer to you, but that's what came up to me. The whole notion of a good communicator can mirror the other person's speech, tone, and so forth. Just a thought.
Feels like a good segue. What do we think, Callie and Jill? I think Rob has set us up perfectly to move into our first panel discussion, where you hopefully can see that I have pinned 4 videos on the first screen of Zoom. These are the 4 panelists, so I would like to especially welcome Rob, Sharon, Holly, and Tutalani for joining us today. We are going to simply reflect a bit about where we are, because our 4 panelists represent 4 very different places in career stages. So we would like to hear from each of you about what you feel works well being a mentor and in the mentoring relationships that you've developed.